We'll come back to order. Reports from standing committees.
March 2, 2022, Mr. Presidential Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 31, engrossed, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. No, Senator Beitman. Senator Scott, Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, the House bill that was just read in, Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship, it's House Bill 3031, has a WE appropriation in it now, and I ask it be re-referred to committee number 2.
Well, without the chairman here, we have no one, absent objection. House Bill 32? 31, absent objection, House Bill 31 will be re-referred to committee number 2 who are absent. All right, I'd like to do that. Said Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
Heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Senator Baldwin, you left some unfinished work up here.
Oh, my cheat sheet. Committee of the whole will come back to order for the second half of this ballgame. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 52. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 52, engrossed, timeline to prepare and process absentee ballots, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to elections. It was referred to committee number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. No, Senator Case. Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. There you are. Senator Driscoll, what's your pleasure, sir? House Bill 52. Hold on. All rise to report it. Do so with a favorable motion on House Bill 52 engrossed, and for further explanation, I call on the good Senator Nethercott. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 52, good senators, was brought to us out of an increasing need to change our law associated with the timeline to prepare and process absentee ballots by our clerks. So here's some quick numbers that I think are really important for your understanding about absentee ballots over the course of years, and then we'll walk through the bill. In 2008, the general election, 23% of ballots cast were absentee. In the 2012 general election, 24%. 2016, 28%. 2020, 46% of the ballots were cast absentee, which is about 143,380 people. And so when you think about our clerks having to count those absentee ballots the night of the election, that gets pretty burdensome to do. And so if we in Wyoming want to receive our election results the night of Election Day, as we are accustomed to do, we need to allow the counting of those ballots in the days preceding Election Day. So that's the purpose of the bill, and intent of the bill comes to us from our clerks to manage this. And I think you'll find that the bill has some really appropriate safeguards. So when we go to page 2, which is really the meat of the bill, on lines 20 through 23, it indicates that the county clerk may choose. So it's at the county clerk's election. They don't have to do it. They can do it if they want to. So some of the counties don't have a large absentee voting population, and so they don't need to do this, but other counties experience a high volume of absentee voters, and they may need to do this. So they have the choice to prepare and process absentee ballots the Thursday or Friday immediately preceding Election Day, subject to the following safeguards. And so we can see those on page 3. And so starting at the top there on Romanet 1, A county clerk electing to use the method must notify the Secretary of State if they're going to count ballots early. Romanet 2, that the county clerk shall notify each political party of the date, time, and place that the ballot preparation and processing will occur, and the notice will include additional information about in-person observation. A restriction about the candidate or the candidate's committee, or any person involved with the candidate, being allowed to observe the preparation and processing of those ballots. And really very importantly, maybe most importantly, no results of the absentee ballots prepared and processed shall be known, printed, released, or provided to any person, and the results shall not be incorporated into the final vote count in any matter until after the polls close on election day. So not even the clerk's office will know that vote count. It won't be incorporated in. And really the purpose of that is to make sure that there's no indication about an outcome. Like this person has this votes and this person has this vote, so you better go race to the polls and get that done. Prevents that. Going on to page 4, no person observing the preparation and processing of absentee ballots shall be allowed to have in their possession any personal electronic device, except a device for medical necessity, and you cannot have that within 10 feet of the area where the preparation and processing is occurring. And we give rulemaking authority to the Secretary of State about this process. There is a felony offense associated with a violation of this particular act. Good senators, I would ask for your favorable consideration. There is a committee of the whole amendment. Can I have that read in?
House Bill 52, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 20.
Now, it looks like it's the chairman's amendment, and I'll have him move it and explain it.
Chairman Driscoll. Don't have it in my hand. Senator Nethercott?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might just here help out the good chairman here. It looks like this amendment, I would move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 52. Ask for your favorable consideration. Good senators, if you look at page 2, line 20, it adds the words, "and any other mandatory procedures for counting absentee ballots under this chapter." So it looks like it's just kind of saving language there about how that reads. And then on page 3, line 19, we have "before known, insert made." So pretty simple kind of technical changes there. Happy to stand for questions or the good chairman. Ask for your favorable consideration on this standing committee amendment.
Actually, it's committee of the whole amendment, isn't it?
Or
No?
committee of the whole amendment.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on the amendment? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 52, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 52 has passed. Committee of the Whole back to the bill. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you. The motion that we just voted on was standing committee, even though committee of the whole was your intent. So do you want to repeat the motion, have us vote correctly? I think were we on committee of the whole amendment?
Yes.
Yeah. The motion that we just voted on, though, that you said was all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1.
You're right. You're right.
So if you want to.
Let's try that again. Everybody get their best voices on. All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to pass the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 52, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. That's exactly the same count as the first time. Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 52 has passed Committee of the Whole. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion when the Committee of the Whole rises to report and do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 52, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. House Bill 52 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration, House Bill 65. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 65 engrossed, county tax protest filing date, sponsored by Representative Bear, an act relating to ad valorem taxation. Was referred to Committee Number 3, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Senator Case, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Senator Case, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 65, county tax protest filing date. And for an explanation of the bill, I ask to yield to the great senator that shares part of Fremont County with myself, and Senator Salazar.
The great Senator Cooper, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pretty complicated bill here. It has to do with when your appeal is of a tax, of property taxes, it's actually considered filed. And what it amounts to is you have 30 days from the time you get your notification, that your notification is mailed to you to respond. It's a, it came to us from a constituent that says, doesn't say, they had responded 30 days within their 30-day thing, but window, but their postmark was within the 30 days, but it was received after the 30 days. So the appeal was rejected. The appeal was appealed, and they were eventually put into place. So what this does is it corrects that says that to appeal your taxes, it has to be postmarked or transmitted not later than 30 days. So it puts that postmark stamp on the appeal as well as on the notification. That's the whole bill.
Thanks, Senator Cooper. Discussion on the bill. Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Case's motion when the Committee of the Whole rises to report to do so with favorable recommendation of House Bill 65, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. House Bill 65 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 78. Reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 78, bid rejection or denial for public works contracting, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to public works. It was referred to Committee Number 2, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Guru, Kinski, and Steinmetz. Excused Senators Hicks and Perkins. Senator Kinski, acting chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure, Senator Driscoll?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move this bill and the next one back. I'll move them. Our appropriations is off the floor, and I'm not prepared to. We have one here. Senator Hicks, would you like to present? Okay, we'll lay those back for a few minutes.
We'll set
78 and 79 both. So we'll move them further down the list so they can get a chance to prep up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll, which means that the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 80. Reading clerk will read that one in.
House Bill 80, Campaign Reports Amendments, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to campaign reports. It was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Senator Driscoll, chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 80 engrossed do pass. There is an amendment. I would like it read in at this time, please.
House Bill 80, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 3, line 14 after.
For further explanation, I'd call on Senator Nethercott.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, you have campaign reports amendments, and this bill is similar to the bill we previously discussed before lunch today. It does essentially two things. It removes on page 2, lines 11 and 12, cleans up the language there by deleting the lines which expends any funds in any primary, general, or special election. And just to kind of back up a little bit, this bill relates to campaign reports, requiring all campaign and political action committees to file an itemized statements of contributions and expenditures already required in law. It removes some of those requirements and increases the fines for failing to file. So you can see there on page 2, lines 11 and 12, we reduce the requirements by deleting the language which expends any funds in any primary, general, or special election. And we increase the penalty on lines 14 through 17 on page 3 to $500 per day. This is mirror language to the other bill that you saw. So what we have heard with our election laws is that there's really no meaningful penalty associated with these failures to file these very important campaign expenditure reports. Now, does that seem like a lot? Yes. Is it a lot? It is. But we do know it's a lot for like the individual candidates. But for these large kind of maybe out-of-state organizations, they're willing to just pay that $500 fee and say whatever, or not pay at all. And so trying to kind of create a situation that results in that deterrence or really the filing of the report. Again, I want to remind the committee members, based on the discussion we had before lunch, that there is a process for the Secretary of State to turn that penalty down to 0. So what happens is the Secretary of State will issue that final order if you don't have your campaign statement in within 21 days. Day 22, Secretary of State's office will issue that order, starting levying that fine. Then you can file a motion to reconsider the assessment of that penalty and provide good reasons, as long as you also file the campaign report. They can drop it down to 0. So that, good senators, is the purpose of the bill. There is a standing committee amendment that has been read in. I would like to move standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 80. Good senators, you can see on page 3, line 14, we added the language "up to," which gives the Secretary of State's office the discretion to not assess $500 per day, but up to $500 per day based on their discretion, so giving a little bit of time there. I would stand for, I'd seek your vote on the standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 80 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Questions on the amendment? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Nettletott's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 80, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 80 has passed Committee of the Whole. We're back to the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Senator Hutchins.
Chairman, real quick question. Are there numbers on how many candidates do not file their reports? Thank you.
Any further questions to pile on? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was there any discussion on the committee that $500 a day, as the good senator that floor sponsored had mentioned, is ridiculously significant to some and probably not all that significant to others, and therein lies its challenge. And honestly, maybe not everybody in here has been late at some point or another on a filing, but it's probably reasonable that it's pretty close to that. And the concern I have is good actors, reasonable actors, and folks that have modest campaigns. A $500 per day, and I realize there's a may there, or not a may, it's an up to, whereby the Secretary of State would be able to potentially come back and reduce it. There's no obligation, as I understand, for them to reduce it. And I can imagine a circumstance where somebody of modest means that was running for office ended up 5 days late. Maybe they have a political difference with the Secretary of State's office, the discretion's theirs, and all of a sudden that individual has a $2,500 bill, which would be very significant to them. Whereas once again, large, out-of-state, mega million-dollar entity just kind of thinks, all right, $500 a day, I'll ride this one out. So was there discussion on trying to have a little more nuanced approach where the fine fits the assets maybe, or something along those lines?
Senator Nettletott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd encourage you to read the bill carefully to understand being 5 days late does not equate to a $2,500 fine. So the date that you have to file is 7 days, but not more than 14 days before the election, right? So it starts at that point for when you shall file that itemized statement. And then you have an additional 21 days with notifications from the Secretary of State's office about the need to file the report. And so really you're looking at a full, over 30 days of lateness with notifications before you get notice about the fine being levied. So it's not, oops, I didn't file it the date I was supposed to, drop $500 or thousands of dollars. There's a month that passes by in essence. The issue of $500 per day, certainly there's no magic to $500, but you know that. You know that. So I'm assuming it's a rhetorical question about whether or not $500 is an appropriate amount to deter bad actors from failing to file a campaign statement. Would it deter you? Would it motivate you to file more timely, or your political action committee? Or would it just be part of doing business and you're willing to pay that fine? Certainly up for debate whether or not $500 is appropriate or not, but we do think it's a motivating piece.
Senator Scott?
Mr. President, a lot of the problem here over the years, and the numbers vary by year, has been candidates who file, try to get somewhere and don't, and after being defeated, just don't bother to file the reports, think they don't have to after being defeated. And it's been a chronic problem with the Secretary of State's office. That's why the up to language is being added, so they do have some flexibility in dealing with those people. But some of them, Mr. Chairman, can be pretty recalcitrant. And so that's why you need some flexibility in the penalty. But numerically, most of the problem has been defeated candidates or candidates who thought that because they were unopposed, I think they occasionally get that, think they don't need to report anything because they didn't have anything to report. So you have both problems. Mostly the concern is with the ones that got defeated, just don't want to have anything more to do with the thing. You have to persuade them to file something.
Further comments or discussion? Senator Bouchard.
Testing.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This goes into that same section that we were in before, and if a C4 decides that they're going to challenge even in court and say they're not going to file a report, then they would be accruing more charges. So this comes right back to the same argument we were in. And it looks like it's more of a chilling effect on groups that work just on issue advocacy. So with that in mind, since we refuse to define that, I think that we're still back to square one again on the same argument that this probably could be found unconstitutional if it goes against a C3 or C4. So I'm kind of leaning against this right now.
Comments, replies? Are you ready for the question? Okay, question being called. All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 80, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 80 has passed committee of the whole. Okay, rewind a little bit. We're going back to House Bill 78, the next bill for our consideration. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 78, bid rejection or denial for public works contracting, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to public works, was referred to Committee Number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Guru, Kinski, and Steinmetz. Excused Senators Hicks and Perkins. Senator Kinski, acting chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee whole rise and report it, do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 78, bid rejection or denial of public works contracting. Next explanation of this good little general appropriations bill, I ask that you call upon the Honorable Senator from Sheridan, Senator Kinski.
The Honorable Senator Kinski.
I think Senator Brightman's the honorable one.
We'll take what we can get. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So House Bill 78 deals with public works contracting, which, as you know, is required to be bid out. And there's specific statutes on how they are to be bid out. The question comes up periodically when a bid is rejected or somebody isn't even allowed to pre-qualify to submit a bid, and they'd like an explanation. They deserve an explanation. So this simply says on page 5, subparagraph B, beginning with 13, that when they reject a bid or response for a contract, or they deny a bidder the opportunity to submit a bid or to respond, they shall provide them a written response describing the reasons for the rejection or denial within 10 business days. And they'll describe qualifications or responsibilities that they felt were deficient. Then, getting buzzed. Then on page 6, where they actually don't give it to the lowest bidder, they shall within 10 business days of letting the contract, let the lowest responsible bidder know in writing what the reasons for it were. Now, quite often the reasons are that people dummy up is they don't want to get sued. So page 6, beginning on line 11, says that the written response can't be used as the basis for a lawsuit against the agency under the Administrative Procedures Act. So you're entitled to the explanation. You deserve an explanation. You're not entitled necessarily to sue on the basis of the explanation. That removes the fear element so that people can actually give the explanation. The balance of the bill simply contains a cross-reference to those sections that are created on pages 5 and 6. I'll stand for questions.
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, I'm struggling to understand how a written statement rejecting a bid where the agency might have made a decision unlawfully would not be used against that agency. I appreciate us stating that, but I don't think that this is probably legal for a variety of reasons. I refuse to say it's unconstitutional today. I'm going to go one day without doing that. But I think this is absurd. If it's not actionable, why provide it? Why are you inviting the agencies into this legal quagmire? Please stop.
Further questions or discussion?
I hope so. It's terrible.
Senator Kinsey, back to you.
It will cost the
Oh,
taxpayers
Senator Scott. Let's take Senator Scott
so
first.
much money.
And, Mr. Chairman, as a corollary to that, if it proves that you can't avoid using it in court, and I suspect our legal expert may be right on that, what kind of an administrative burden are we putting on the agencies? Because then they'll have to be very careful about what they say and how they say it, get attorneys involved. What kind of a paperwork burden is this going to result in?
Okay, Senator Kinsey, I believe it's back to you.
Thank you. I can try to get the answer to the legal quagmire, which was not actually a question, but I'll treat it as such, and get that for a second, assuming that we pass this on. The whole essence of this is a contractor's entitled to some sort of explanation. I mean, we've had contractors when I was mayor that we just, every time they got involved, they'd be the low bid, and it would be nothing but change orders after that we knew that they really were not going to be the low bid. We had somebody that every time we let a contract to them, it ended up in litigation of one sort or another. Or a contractor where their work is just continuously below standard. And if you're not awarding contracts or you're not letting them bid on that basis, they deserve to know that. That's the whole essence of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I don't believe that that's a lawful basis to deny it. And so a careful review of the Supreme Court opinions on this case where agencies have been challenged by awarding contracts not based on the lowest bidder. It is the quickest way into litigation, installing public works contracts, which we know any delay in a public works contracts costs millions more. And so I think that there's just maybe a failure to understand that. Do they deserve to know? Maybe they already do know, but what they did is they created a shell company. And that shell company is a new corporation which came to bid, even though you have the same principal people. And they maybe did change orders, but that's not unlawful, and that's not a basis to deny the bid. Maybe they're not your local contractor, instead come from out of county, not a basis to deny the bid. So there's no clear, explicit bases to deny the bid in our statute. So again, you're walking our agencies into a legal quagmire, into what is and isn't a legal basis to deny the bid. This is fraught with danger, with the desire to turn this into Colorado law, or my apologies, to the state to the south, which is the most dysfunctional public works contracting laws in the country, where everyone is challenged. Injunctions are placed on every public work contract because everyone wants to fight. It's similar in federal contract bidding.
Further discussion? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that it's accurate to say that we don't have any provision in statutes that we have to accept the lowest, because it is in statutes and it's in the bill. And I'm familiar with at least one agency that repeatedly, I wouldn't say repeatedly, but on occasion rejects the lowest bid. And the language is, as it comes in, lowest responsible bidder. And I think under some of the scenarios my colleague from Sheridan County laid out, if you have a track record of history of individual companies that do this over and over again, I don't think that would qualify, quite frankly, as a responsible bidder. So I don't know that it's accurate to say that we don't have that provision in our statutes right now, because I am familiar with several cases where exactly those type of scenarios have occurred and the lowest bidder was rejected, and they've stood up the test of time and the issue.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I share the concerns of the senator from here in Laramie County. I imagine going through the process, if there are 10 bidders, you're obviously only going to select one. It'd be nice if there were 10 bidders. We probably don't get that many very often, but let's pretend we did. And you're going to have to write 9 letters that are legally sound, that you could defend in court, that are complete, because you're not going to be able to, once you get to court, go outside of the bounds of what you put in the letter as your justification. To fully justify the decision you made, when some of it probably will be subjective. We don't have true objective standards. We like to think we do, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is, I kind of liked A more than B. And we all know that. We've probably all made various selections where at the end of the day, it kind of was, I kind of liked A more than B. That doesn't show up well in a document that's going to have to be presented in court and defended. And yeah, I just can't imagine this isn't going to cost everyone that's bound by it a substantial amount of time and money through, first of all, attorney's fees to ensure that those letters are written well, and then maybe a 1 in 3 litigation rate, which will be onerous as well. I appreciate the intent, and when I first read it, I thought only of the intent. But I share the concern. I do not think this is going to go well for us. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've not read all the Supreme Court cases on this. I don't know anything about Colorado, the nightmare of Colorado bidding law. I know I've had these same conversations at City Hall with my staff that was just constantly frightened if we didn't take a crappy contractor with the lowest price bid. And so I pointed out to them, as I'll point out to the folks here, the existing language, contracts for public improvements. If a contract is let for bid, the contract shall be the lowest bidder, who shall be determined qualified and responsible in the sole discretion of the governing body. Then it goes on. Cities, towns, and joint powers boards may pre-qualify contractors to submit bids or responses based on such criteria as the project type, experience, expertise, professional qualifications, past performance, staff proposed, schedule proposed, financial strength, qualification of supervisors proposed to be used, technical solutions proposed, or references. And I think those same factors are called out when you reject a bid or reject an opportunity to bid. If you're using these factors, you just simply say, we don't think you're qualified for this reason. So we actually did disqualify people from submitting bids or after reject bids, and we didn't get sued. And now, in our case, we were upfront with them. Every time we let a bid out to you, we end up in change order hell or litigation over landowners that are unhappy, projects, land that's not restored properly, that sort of thing. So that I just, the committee felt this was brought by two of our House colleagues who feel strongly that these people are owed an explanation, and I think they're owed an explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Henderson.
Mr. Chairman, this reminds me of that movie Cool Hand Luke, when the captain stated that what we have here is a failure to communicate.
Further comments or questions? Senator Garou.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too asked some of the same questions or had some of the same concerns that the good senator from Laramie County had about this, about saying too much and getting yourself into trouble. As a former commissioner and town councilman, I was always taught the less said the better when it comes to these things. But we were assured in testimony, as my friend from Sheridan was saying, that really what the attempt here was to try to get, especially for our smaller contractors or folks that are just breaking into the field of working in government contracts, is to try to let them know when they've made a mistake, when they haven't fulfilled their obligations or their bonding requirements weren't right, or they just had made some, when they made technical errors, to point them out so they could do it better the next time. That was the genesis of this bill. And as far as the legal quagmire, the slippery slope, or whatever, the unintended consequences of this, I think we should try to ferret these out. I'd like to see this pass along and see if we can get some more answers to this. And I know some may think that's a nonsensical position, so I'll say that before she does. But I am on and in favor of the bill. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regrettably, on and against the bill. Got quite a bit of experience with contracts, and it's a slippery slope. And I'll leave everyone with this simple saying: what's left unsaid does not have to be retracted. And it's an important thing to remember sometimes, because we try to do something right and it seems right, but sometimes it'll just get us into a lot of other trouble. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further comments? Are you ready for the question? You look ready. All those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 78, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. My hearing aids are working fine today. Okay. How it's that calls for a standing vote, correct? So all those in favor, please stand. It's a big number. All those opposed, stand. I know it's shocking, but House Bill 78 failed the standing division vote pursuant to Senate Rule 6-5, having failed a standing division vote, which was 21-9, by the way. A roll call vote is required. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call on House Bill 78. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin?
No.
No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Driscoll?
Excused.
Excused. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Garou? Aye. Driscoll?
No.
No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. James? No. Kinski? Kinski? Aye. Kolb? No. Cost? Aye. Landon? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstetter? Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 78, 9 aye, 21 no.
House Bill 78, having failed the roll call vote pursuant to Senate Rule 6-SA, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 79. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 79 engrossed, Employment Support Fund Amendment, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee. An act relating to unemployment compensation was referred to Committee Number 2, which adjourned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. I, Senator Garou, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee whole rise and report to do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 79, Employment Support Fund Amendments. This is a simple little bill that tries to address a problem that you have. If the what you have in the this is out of the Employment Support Fund, and there's in the Employment Support Fund there's a number of these employment support grants that come out of the federal government to help in various programs for employment and unemployment and move those along. And those grants come out, and there's a deficit between what those grants are and what the. Are you supposed to do this? Okay, thank you. And that's as far as I'm going to go. If you call him on the good senator from Teton County, I'll let him explain this bill.
That was a great introduction. Senator Garou, can you keep following that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is the second bill and one I'm now calling our post-budget stress syndrome package. As our good chairman was saying, this bill is merely, this comes to us from the Department of Workforce Services, and the intent is just to regulate cash flows. And the department, in its 23-24 budget, seeks an expenditure of $7.8 million of unemployment funds to provide programs for the unemployed. But what happens is they run into a time crunch between the federal budget year and the state budget year, and they run out of funds. And these are all unemployment funds. They are no general funds are a part of this. And all they were requesting to do is, instead of sweeping the account clean and then waiting for a reappropriation, the federal funds a few months later, at which time they would have to slow down or end certain parts of the program because they just didn't have the money. What they were asking to do, and what this legislation was asking to do, was to not revert the funds and just allow the funds to stay. And so, and basically, like I say, it's just a cash flow management. And at this point, we have a committee of the whole amendment, and I'd like to have it read in at this time.
It actually looks like it's a standing committee amendment, I believe.
Standing committee amendment, I apologize.
House Bill 79, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, corrected copy. Page 1, line 1, delete.
At this time, I now would like to move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 and ask you to vote no. Here's the post-traumatic stress syndrome part. I asked for this bill, or I was the one that had this bill drafted for the folks at the Department of Workforce Services. If you read the bill carefully in its original form, you'll see on page 2, it says correctly that the fund shall not revert. For some unknown reason that is beyond all passing, I asked for an amendment to that for some reason, thinking that somehow down the hall that got changed or somewhere, and I asked for that to be switched, which would undo what we wanted, what the department wanted, and what I asked for it to do. And my good friends on my committee, for some reason, trusted me at that moment and voted for it. We all went off the cliff together. So what I'm asking you to do now is to vote no on the Standing Committee amendment, which would restore the bill to its original state and the state and the state of which the Department of Workforce Services and the unemployed people of Wyoming who need your help can get. Once again, as I say, this is not general funds. These are unemployment funds that are put forth by our employers and folks who work, and so that's all these funds are, and it just helps them. Once again, if you're wondering, the unemployment fund account is one of the most well-funded in the country. The average length of unemployment funds in the United States is 18 weeks. In your state of Wyoming, we have a 139-week total of unemployment benefits accrued in the account. So this does not hurt the account. This does not put us in any type of financial danger. So at this point, I would urge you to vote no on the Standing Committee amendment.
Question on the amendment on Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 79. That motion being made by Senator Guru. You've been asked to vote no. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no?
No!
Standing Committee Amendment 1 to House Bill 89 has failed. We're back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, the confidence of the body is well noted and not deserved at all. So now I'm going to ask you the big one, and that is to vote yes on the bill. The bill is truly, I joke, but the bill is important because what happens is, like I say, folks that need a little bit of help are not getting it for a couple of months, or they have to cut back on programs, and it really is A, unfair to them, and B, not necessary, given the funding that is available to them. So I urge you to vote yes on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On in favor of the bill, just a couple things. The total amount will bounce around, but it's going to bounce between $6 and $7 million. So it's a significant amount of money, and that's why this bill is important, because without those monies, as we were talked about, that there are certain programs that either have to come to a halt or they have to cut back. And so, while that may be, obviously that creates more than just an inconvenience for the recipients. It can create true hardship. So again, the other thing I would point out in this bill, that otherwise this is money that comes out of the investment fund, but the result of the reversion is it actually goes to general fund. So this actually is an interesting use of the way to backdoor money out of the employment funds into the general fund. But the purposes of that fund is to take care of the unemployment and participate in those programs. There's 5 or 6 different programs that they do with this. That's help in some. I think some are single mothers. Some of them are other people that have particular hardships in the workplace and things like that. So it is an important bill, but it's not an insignificant amount of money. So urge your aye vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Perkins' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that they do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 79, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 79 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 87. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 87 Insurance Investment Amendment, sponsored by the Blockchain Committee, an act relating to insurance. Was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee of the whole rise to report, to do so with a recommendation that House Bill 87 do pass, and for further explanation, I call on Senator Rothfuss.
Senator
I'm very
Rothfuss, the
prepared
guy
today. Thank you.
Waving his hand. Go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 87, Insurance Investment Amendments from the Blockchain Select Committee in the interim, provides some updates to our insurance investment legislation statutes, which were written, I believe it was 1985 when they were drafted the way they are. There have been a lot of revisions nationwide in best practices. And this is legislation that was worked on during the interim between the insurance commissioner and some stakeholders that were interested in preparing an insurance statutory framework that is more appropriate for larger insurance providers, such as reinsurance, which was particularly the focus. And Mr. Chairman, what this does is it goes into allowable investments, and you'll see that specifically it focuses on those insurance providers that have very large, well-heeled investment portfolios and give them more flexibility in a few areas of more modern investment types, which are, again, attractive to industry. But at the same time, our in-state regulated insurance companies also supported this because they like the increased flexibility as well that this provides. All of this is consistent with NAIC standards and best practices around the country, so there's nothing here that really goes outside of normal practices, but again, it's being optimized to provide a good framework for those larger insurance providers that we're trying to recruit and that we were working the interim to address. On page 2, there are some new definitions that are provided related to domestic jurisdiction and foreign jurisdiction. Those are simply copied and pasted from NAIC best practices, so those are national definitions that are used elsewhere. The B, again, additional definitions on page 3, similar, just trying to get at some of the new concepts that are here, including high-grade investment and securities valuation office references there. Bottom of page 4 on to page 5 is just conforming statutory amendments based on the new definitions. On page 5 at the bottom is where we start to get into some nuanced changes where there's some new allowances. You see that right now, and I'll pause for a moment, most of the classifications of specific investments allow up to 5% in a certain investment class. So you'll see that repeated a number of times throughout this legislation. What this does is provides for the opportunity for a certain classification investment to also include mutual funds that are registered with the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission and are diversified within the meaning of the investment company, et cetera. Investments in diversified mutual funds shall be limited to 10% of the insurer's admitted assets per fund. So this is a small change where right now you typically have a 5% single asset limitation for insurance investments. The reason this would go to a 10% in this case is because the asset itself is already inherently diversified. So going to a single asset diversification of 10% in this instance is specifically justified. Going into authorized investments on page 6 and on to page 7 provides for the opportunity that obligations issued by any solvent corporation in a foreign jurisdiction other than an insurance company traded in the United States consistent with securities laws shall be an allowed investment as long as it's considered to be a high-grade investment up to 5% limitation. Romanet 18 that you see on page 7 provides for opportunities that go slightly beyond what a traditional insurance provider would be able to do if the insurer has $100 million or more in surplus and at least 5 times its authorized control risk-based capital. What that means, right now it's considered if you go below 200%, there starts to be a little bit of concern. So this is an entity that is over 500% of its risk-based capital, which translates to they've got a significant surplus and they're at that point allowed to invest in interest in a partnership or limited liability company up to a single 5% investment in the assets and not more than 10% in aggregate. Romanet 19 is exchange traded funds with specific limitations that you see at the bottom of the page onto page 8. And paragraph B, at any one time, the aggregate amount of foreign investments shall not exceed 20% of the insurer's admitted assets, providing a cap on foreign investments, but making sure that those are allowed pursuant to the previous clauses. On to page 9, a similar provision providing for alternatives, what's called the general, this general bucket of non-traditional or non-expressly allowed investments. Right now, for a smaller or normal sized insurance company, you would have an opportunity to have up to 5% of your investments in non-traditionals and not more than 1% in any one asset. For these particularly large entities that are very well heeled, they could have up to 10% in non-traditional and not more than 2% in any one entity. Page 9 onto page 10 is a requirement of an exemption or an allowance for an exemption for companies that would be doing large transactions or many transactions, that if there is not a capacity to do the specific transactions or provide for the electronic file keeping and other transaction capabilities in the state of Wyoming, a request could be made to do those elsewhere, but when the commissioner finds that it would be possible to do those in the state of Wyoming, that allowance would be repealed and they would be brought back to the state of Wyoming. There is a desire by the insurance commissioner to ensure that assets are managed within the state of Wyoming to the greatest degree possible, and this still continues to provide that, but if there is an impossibility of doing that and meeting the business model, there would be some flexibility there. That's the legislation. Again, it is modernizing, consistent with best practices, our insurance investment statutes, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I believe there are no amendments. Is that correct? Okay. With that, I'd be happy to answer any more questions. Thank you.
Questions or discussions? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion when the committee of the whole rises to report or do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 87, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. House Bill 87 has passed. Committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 42. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 42 engrossed, local government distribution, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to local government funding. It was referred, one moment please. It was referred to Committee Number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Perkins.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee whole rise and report it. Do so with a due pass recommendation on House Bill 42, local government distributions. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is the local distribution bill of $105 million that goes out as direct distributions to counties, and much in exactly, I believe, the same way that it has been in the past for local distributions of the $105 million. It follows excuse me if this is improper, but it follows the Madden formula, which most of us are familiar with, which is the way that that's been probably for the last at least 2, if not 3 biennia. And although there's been different distributions there, it comes to us, that's what it does. I think that most of us are familiar with that. I think that there is a distribution on your potential distribution of you'll see some documents have been laid out that kind of shows where your county is, but most of you should be fairly familiar with this since it's been the same way. The difference between this bill is it left the Joint Appropriations Committee, and it's come to us from our friends from the House, is they've added an additional $15 million for what was oftentimes called consensus money. And so ultimately, they've got some provisions in here. There's another $15 million that's then allocated, I think, mostly simply by, if I remember right, it's mostly by prorated out on by population per county. And then you've got to have agreement from municipalities and the counties representing at least 70% of the individuals, population of the county, agree on what that consensus money is before it can be released and before it can be expended on a whatever the joint effort is. That's different than it came. There's not unanimity among your Senate Appropriations Committee on that 15 million, but ultimately that's what the bill does. I think there's a committee of the whole amendment that comes after, but at this point that completes my explanation unless somebody wants a further explanation of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. Seeing none, we have a standing committee amendment and then a committee of the whole amendment. If someone would like to move that or have read it. Can we have standing committee amendment read in perhaps?
House Bill 42, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 14, line 15.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 42 and ask the body to vote aye. All this does is change it from June to July. That just matches up with the right year and when those distributions are made. So that's typically, that's kind of how it generally happens. It lines up with the fiscal years, and so it really is essentially a technical correction. And I would ask your aye vote. Would stand for questions. Thank you.
Question. Motion to adopt standing committee amendment of the whole, standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 42. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Standing committee amendment 1 to House Bill 42 has passed. Committee of the whole amendment 1.
House Bill 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 4, after.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 42 and ask the body's favorable consideration. We are now in day 13, and I've noted in my time here that as the budget session wears on, people get tired and become more and more inclined to spend money than they did in the earlier portion of it. But what we're going to ask you to do is to not spend more money. This amendment concerns $15 million on top of the $105 million that was appropriated by our friends. And we heard in committee testimony from organizations representing these local governments, they hadn't even asked for it. Somebody decided that it was going to be a good idea to put an additional 15 million in there. And so we're going to ask you to approve this amendment, which would delete the additional 15 million. So the operative portion of it is if you go to page 14, you start at line 5, which appropriates an additional $15 million. You strike all the way to the bottom. And then on page 15, you strike all the way through the end of line 7, and that has the effect of deleting the additional $15 million. And I will defer to my co-sponsor to walk you through why we feel there is already sufficient funding flowing to the local governments in addition to this $105 million, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So you remember a bill that we sent out of here just last week called direct ARPA funding. And so in that bill for local governments, there's a total of $205 million in there that will be administered by the SLIB, and that covers everything from hospitals, and I understand there may be an increase in that, water, local projects, it's unspecified. So there's $205 million there. And then, members, you should have on your desk one of these. And this will show you what the local distributions will be under the 105. But it also shows you, if you go over to the column to the right that says ARPA distributions. So these were the ARPA funds that went straight to the counties and the municipalities. We didn't appropriate these. These were direct payments to the cities and counties. And so when you get over to that second column from the right, you can see what your county got and is going to get this year under ARPA distributions for your county and every single town within your district. And it shows you what's showing up with federal dollars. But I would just take you to the very last page and look at the total direct distributions that went to cities and towns and counties, it was 175 million. And then, Mr. Chairman, we have this other bill that's currently working its way through the process called the infrastructure bill. And we know right now how much money is going to come into two funds within the state of Wyoming, and that's called the Water Pollution Control Revolving Account and the State Drinking Water Revolving Loan Account. And within of those, they do have loans and grants, but those go strictly to municipalities primarily, could potentially go to a county or a joint powers board. But within the infrastructure bill, there's another $472 million there for your local governments. And so when we all add all up what's currently already in the ARPA Direct, this doesn't include the 105 for the local government distribution. So what we have in the ARPA Direct, Senate File 66, between what we have in the direct distributions going to cities, towns, and counties that we didn't appropriate, and 175, or that's 175, and then the infrastructure bill is another 472. And so there is more than ample of money available for your local governments and your counties to do infrastructure. We're in the neighborhood now of 5 or 6, no, I think it's total someplace here. You can total it up. You got 205, 472, and 175 million. It's available for those local governments right now, and 175 direct distribution. There is more than enough money out there. In fact, I would venture a guess that we'll be back here in 2 years probably reappropriating some of this money that couldn't be spent in the next 2 years with all of the infrastructure money that's available to your cities, towns, and counties. On and for the amendment.
Discussion on the amendment. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to acknowledge this extra money that's come in. But folks, how many of you sit on a little town council? Or in your meetings till 1 o'clock at night? These are little towns, no traffic lights. And it's not just infrastructure. So we sit around the table in those little towns and try to figure out what we're going to do with how we're going to make that backhoe last a little bit longer, or maybe it is we got to sort out how we're going to work the snow in an extra heavy winter. You know, we've found ways to help our wildlife, help a lot of things in this state. If you've served on a little town council, you know how hard it is. I've even served on a fair board, and you talk about scrapping for money. I don't think this is a good amendment. I don't think we reach in there and take away from them just because they've had a little extra along the way. These are people where is there a water line break? You don't go contract out somebody. The whole town council shows up to try to fix that water line in the middle of the night. This is not a good amendment. On and against it.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would like to echo the same words as the president. You know, I represent small communities like Pavilion and Du Bois, and I see how they're barely making ends meet. You know, they're not receiving the huge amounts of money that we've been talking about. This is rural Wyoming, in Du Bois, Wyoming, and I'm working hard to decide on my vote for this, but I have the same views as the president on this, and I'm struggling. Thank you.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you. I mean, you can look on Mr. Chairman, on the amendment, you know, I think it's, you know, I got to admit, this is not an easy decision for me either. As I look at that, in fact, as you look at this, there's obviously a lot of money's going out. There's this 105 million, there's all the other stuff we've done out there. I can tell you, when you add all the capital construction, all the ARPA money, all the school construction, all that comes out, you're probably neighborhood of between $500 and $700 million of construction and capital types of projects going out to the state with the multitude of things we've talked about during this session. On the heels of that, we have the infrastructure bill coming right behind us, which is also going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into this state as well as around the country. And so when you look at that, quite frankly, we've already exceeded the capacity of contractors for capital projects to deal with this stuff. And so is every other state, and so is the federal government. And when you put that in combination with supply chain issues that we all know we're facing, if we watch the cost of building costs even now and where they're at, I can only think that it's going to probably get worse. However, with respect to this particular one, this doesn't necessarily have to be used on capital projects. And as a former commissioner, I remember as a former commissioner trying to, in my county as a former commissioner, we just didn't have very much communication between the county commissioners and the other 5 municipalities in and around our town. And in fact, it's more than that now. But the as you went, there's a significant amount of benefit that happens in your county if you have multiple municipalities and county commissioners to sit down and figure out common projects and work together. And not every one of these will be spent on capital projects. A lot of them will be, but there's other things that you can do as those communities. And it gives, for me, and why I am in favor of this, against this amendment and leaving the 15 million in, is because I think there's significant benefit in having and in creating incentives for those communities to work together. Now, there are some counties in Jackson where they have, in Teton County, where I think they have unified county and town things. And so it's not as big a deal there, but in a lot of counties around our state, it provides a significant benefit and incentive to work together on some common goals. And there's not a lot of money out there that does that. Now, they certainly can band together and make applications for lots of other capital projects and water and sewer and other improvements that we've talked about on other days in this body. But for my money, I think that a $15 million investment in that cooperation between those local government entities can be and should and will prove very useful. And that, for those reasons, despite all the rest of the money we're putting out there, and we are creating our own inflation, and we will chase that, and we will pay for it now and in the future and well into the future, I still think that this is probably a good investment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cole. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this amendment. And I think it's been expounded upon slightly that we got inflation. We keep on throwing more money at this, it's more gas on the fire. I kind of think of it as kind of, I guess, Wyoming's Build Back Better program. We've got hundreds of millions of dollars we're dumping into our economy. That's great. But if we don't be careful on how we do this, that 15 million is going to be evaporated with inflation. And I think if we keep our powder dry, wait a bit, see what happens in the future, we're going to have better choices. We keep on funding these things, believe me, there's no contractors, the materials are difficult to come by, the price is escalating every day in the supply houses, and I just don't see why we're in a big rush to do more deficit spending. We're spending more money than we have spent before funding government. We are taking money out of savings, and I think we have to be prudent in the future. It will not always look like this. We should just be very careful as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak against the amendment. I've seen what's happened in some of these towns and cities in years past when we used to have consensus money and then it went away. And what happened was a lot of projects just got put on hold and some of them just weren't going to happen. This is, I think, a time with ARPA funds where we can actually do some good in some of these towns that have been sitting around waiting for, a building to be able to get repaired or sewer, water lines, old ones. I know in my community I can't even tell you how many times we've had Water line freezes this year, and it's just old stuff that's just never been fixed, infrastructure stuff. So I really think that this is an investment in our communities. You know, they used to have consensus money. We took it away from them. There's a lot of other things we've taken away from them. And, you know, the 105 million that we dispersed between 99 communities gets spread pretty thin. And so this is an opportunity for us to invest in our communities. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to address a couple of the comments down here, and specifically, we talk about how this is going to help our small communities, but I'd like to turn your attention to page 14, ladies and gentlemen. It may not do what you think it does, because this money, this $15 million, will be distributed based on population. So if you're one of those little bitty counties that doesn't have any population, you're not going to get much. So where's the money going? Folks, this just isn't the rescue plan that you think it's going to be under the current bill. It says right there, page 14, line 10, shall be allocated for each county an amount proportional to the county's population to the total share of the state population. Well, you're sitting here in the most populated county in the state. So if you're really worried about your small communities getting an equitable portion of this, what we would do is adopt the amendment, come back with the second reading amendment that would probably equitably distribute the money. And so maybe the reason that we'd want to do that is if you go back to the handout that I handed out, and I was asked a question from a colleague of mine from Park County here, it says, well, why is some of them negative? So if you look at that very last column over there, why are those negative? And because the ARP monies was distributed exactly like it's proposed in this bill, just strictly based on population. So in our local distribution formula, we have a formula that goes through, and we have a hardship formula, and there's some other things that are calculated in there. And so what that negative is just the differential. If that would have been, if those ARP, that 175 million would have been distributed on our local distribution money, that's the amount of money that they would have got or not got under that distribution formula. So what it tells you is because they used population for the ARP, your little communities were disadvantaged under the 105 formula that we currently use. Mr. Chairman, so this does the exact same thing. So it was going to heavily weight. Most of the money is going to go into 2 or 3 counties, the most populated counties. And so it's not the rescue plan, all the little people, all the little towns, which, by the way, I can give you the list. Let's see, Rock River, Medicine Bow, Hanna, Elk Mountain, Saratoga, Sinclair, Riverside, Encampment, Bear Oil, Wamsutter, Superior, Farson, Baggs, Dixon, and Reliance. We've done another thing for small. For all that other $800 million out there, we have a position in the Office of State Lands and Investment to help those small communities to actually be able to fill out those grants for all these federal funds to be able to go after the infrastructure, the ARP money and all that thing. So we're trying to help the little guy out here. And I'm telling you, the way this is currently structured on population doesn't help the little guy. I would strongly recommend that you adopt the amendment, come back with the second reading amendment that fixes the distribution if you're really concerned about the little guy.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you. And, you know, my good friend from the Snake River country makes a great point. But, you know, Mr. Chairman, I was just thinking about that, and it reminded me of the Aesop's fable about the dog who crossed the bridge and had the bone in his mouth. And he looked down the water and saw the reflection, and he was so eager to get the bone the other dog had that he dropped. He opened his mouth to get that bone. Of course, that bone dropped in the water, and the dog didn't have any bone. It's easy enough to bring an amendment, and obviously I live in a more populous county, and I gain advantage. My county gains advantage from this, but I'm more than happy to support an amendment that redistributes this on some other formula that takes into account whatever else the body thinks is appropriate to take into account. But I don't think I want to open my mouth and drop a bone on this one. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and we'll wrap this up soon, I'm sure. But I've talked about the little community that I represent. It's not very often that there's much opportunity that comes that way, and that's a community that can really use the help. I agree with my friend from Natrona County. This is one of the better things that we do, and the fact that we can do it, and it brings these municipalities and counties and all folks together at the same table to decide in a unified way how to best use this money has really been one of the great benefits of being able to do this. This is almost like grandma visits the grandkids, gives $100, and so dad says, yeah, we're gonna take your allowance away this week because grandma already gave you some money. I think that we need to live up to what we can do as a state, not get so wound up with whatever they're sending to us from Washington. I think this is important to do. We're so behind in some of these communities, folks. I'm going to vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to address a concern that was raised by my good friend, the president, regarding a small town. What I thought I heard the president say is that some of these small towns have needs besides just infrastructure. But I'd point out that this $15 million is limited to infrastructure. So it doesn't get to go to their local general fund like the $105 million does. So it may be, if the 15 million stays, you may want to consider an investment as to whether you want this to stay as infrastructure, or whether it would simply be spent like the other 105 million. That's just a thought. But along those lines, I do want to point, it is important to understand what we're talking about is 15 million more in general fund to go to infrastructure projects when we already have over $500 million or more going towards infrastructure projects. We do not have enough time to spend all this money in the next biennium. And we don't even know that we have contractors who can do all this work. I mean, this is just unprecedented amount of money, and why throw another 15 million on top of the gasoline on the fire, to borrow the phrase from my friend from the Southwest. On and for the amendment.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. Good discussion. Let me spin off that theme I just heard. This may not do what you think it does. What do? You go home, yeah, we saved 15 million bucks on the backs of our little towns. We're heroes doing that, folks. I sit in 4 small town councils on a monthly basis with my occupation. I watch them struggle for every dollar. And they reach out and use volunteerism in their community like I've never seen before because the money's short. This isn't the place to cut 15 million. It's on and against this amendment.
I sense you're ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Kinski's motion, I believe, to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. Yeah, we better call division. My hearing interacting up again. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, go ahead and sit, and all those opposed, please stand. That count is 12 aye, 18 no. The motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 42 has failed. We're on to Committee of the Whole Amendment 2.
House Bill 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, delete.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 42 and urge the body's favorable consideration. This is a backup plan in case the cutting of the 15 million did not work. And what this amendment says is, if we're going to do this, folks, let's do it right. Right now, this bill is written the way that the the federal Congress did their infrastructure bill based purely on population. That's not how we do it in Wyoming. We do it, again, and I apologize for the use of the proper name, the Madden formula, which says we're gonna feather this a little bit for the smaller, the weakest, and the poorest amongst us. So, and this is how the consensus money was previously distributed. So it takes a look at your tax base, what you can raise, and it gives a little bit more to Albany County. It gives a little bit more to the poorer counties. And it gives just a shade less to Sheridan and just a shade less to Cheyenne and the larger towns. But it's fair. This was the way we did it when we were doing consensus, and I would urge the body's favorable consideration.
Discussion on the amendment. Silence in the crowd. Would you like to question? Oh, Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering if we have any kind of a spreadsheet or something that shows us what we'd be looking at with that so we can have some kind of comparison.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not right at our fingertips, but we can get you one. And on and for the amendment, I think if we're going to do this, this is how the money should be distributed. So support your I vote there on this amendment. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Kenzie's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment 2 to House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Committee of the Whole Amendment 2 has passed, or to House Bill 42 has passed Committee of the Whole. Now we'll move on to Committee of the Whole Amendment 3.
House Bill 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 to engrossed copy, page 9 after line 10, insert.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move amendment number 3 to House Bill 42 engrossed. Ask for your favorable consideration. This is kind of a funny looking one. You'll notice that it says, and it puts it in two places, says no distribution of funds specified in this subsection should be made to any city or town that provides compensation to the member of any board which the governing body of the city or town appoints member unless the compensation is otherwise required by law. Folks, we've got some towns out there, and a definition of a volunteer board, community service, means that you sign up and you do it. And sometimes in law it says that we give travel and we give some type of compensation, and real often it doesn't. And that's actually what develops members for bodies like this. And we've actually got a community, and probably more out there, that pick and choose among their boards. They got a lot of volunteer boards, they pick and choose. And they're paying these boards. They're giving them compensation. And I think it's wrong. And there's not a simple way to tell them they can't do it. But this is the best route you have, is to say, let's make a volunteer board, be a volunteer board. And we're not picking and choosing and picking winners and losers and compensating. So you can have a city or a county that says, well, if you're doing this board, you can't have anything. And if you're doing this board, we're actually going to give you a stipend and take care of it. And I don't agree with that. So this is truly just a policy statement. Let's not start our entities down this path. If they start picking and choosing who they pay to on boards, this is our tax money. And it really ought to be either in law, you get compensated for it, or it's truly a volunteer board. Let's not call it a volunteer board when it's really not. It's a paid board. I ask for your support and stand for questions.
Discussion. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Driscoll? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure whether I think this is a good idea or a bad idea. And it probably would take some discussion about the nature of volunteer boards and maybe exploring how this happens and contemplating it further. But I do know that this is reaching down into what is otherwise local control, where we have affected city council, we have city councils and we have county commissions that have oversight and authority over whatever these boards would be. And they would be able to, through their processes and through public understanding, as well as through the election process, be able to internally regulate. There might be circumstances, and I don't know, where this is a good idea. And there might be circumstances, and I don't know, where this would be a bad idea. But, Mr. Chairman, I do feel that it's a separate policy issue. To me, this seems like it's out of scope of a bill that effectively is intending to provide a distribution of funds. That's not the intent, is to then determine the haves and the have-nots, where the intent here is to force down a policy, and it's not a policy certainly that's anticipated within the title, in my opinion. So, Mr. Chairman, I would challenge the relevance of this amendment pursuant to Senate Rule 11-6 and ask for your ruling as to whether or not this amendment is within the scope of the amendments pursuant to Article 3, Section 20 of the Wyoming Constitution, which states that no bill shall be so altered or amended on its passage to the Senate as to change its original purpose. I find that it's outside of its original purpose, and so I'd appeal to the chair to make a decision as to whether or not it is consistent with the constitutional Article 3, Section 20.
Since it's National Reading Across America Day, I'm going to be reading for a moment, sir.
Folks, I have had distributed a spreadsheet showing the effect of that last amendment. I apologize. I in the hurly-burly of rush, I forgot to get that distributed, but I think you'll see it does basically what I represented. Thank you.
Turn my own mic off, I can't get it back on. After reviewing the statutes and the rules, I believe that the good senator is probably correct, unless someone would like to have that reviewed. I believe that he's probably correct, and that would be the ruling of the chair, is that this is not germane. It doesn't fit the original title or original purpose of the bill. Sensing your silence. Okay. Okay, having ruled that Committee of the Whole Amendment 3 to House Bill 42 did not fit the original title, it does not pass. I believe that was our final amendment. Oh. Right, in accordance with the rule of the amendment was ruled non-germane to the bill. We're back. Okay. Rules Committee has been called. The Senate will stand at ease.
What's the rule? Is it 12-6?
Committee of the Whole will come back to order. The finding of the Rules Committee, Senate, is that this indeed is not germane, and the fix will be coming in the Second Amendment, and I would call on Senator Driscoll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to withdraw Committee of the Whole Amendment number 3 to House Bill 42 engrossed without objection.
Without objection, that amendment is withdrawn. That's the end of the amendments on House Bill 42. We are back on the bill. Is there discussion on the bill? Are you ready? Oh, Senator Kinski.
No, sorry.
Oh, just stretching your legs. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. House Bill 42. House Bill 42 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 4. The reading clerk will, oh. You may. Go ahead, Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, folks. I'd like to remind you that the Senate, all the senators who have requested amendments for third reading on House Bill 100, redistricting the legislature, need to approve those amendments as soon as possible. LSO is waiting to number these amendments in the proper order. It would really benefit the public and other senators if those amendments can be posted and available on our website today. So get that all taken care of if you've been working on those amendments. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 4. The reading clerk will read it in.
House Bill 4 engrossed, water permits livestock on federal land, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, an act relating to water. Was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senator Boner, Bouchard, French, Costa, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with the due pass recommendation on House Bill 4. There is a standing committee amendment. I ask that that be read in.
House Bill 42. One moment, please. House Bill 4, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to an engrossed copy, page 4, line 15, after.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1. And for explanation of both the bill and the amendment, I refer to our colleague from Laramie County.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Present to you an easy bill here. This is a bill for a water permit for beneficial use. On page 2, there's definitions. The heart of the bill is really on page 3, that only a permit issued in the name of a federal agency jointly with a person or grazing association who has the right to the grazing permit. So basically what it does, it ties the two together, and it does, and as we read down the bill, you'll find out that it doesn't, it's only going forward, it's not going backwards, doesn't change anything going backwards. It has a provision here on the bill on page 3 that it can't be changed or amended without seeking the consent of the holder or holders of the grazing permit. Also on the bottom of page 3, any permit issued jointly in the name of a federal agency and grazing permit holder under this section may be transferred, and it has the directions on that. As we turn the page, it has a provision here that if it's not being used due to animal units per month, or that's not constituted against the use of the permit. Actually, in this next part is where I'd like to move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 4, and ask for your vote right now.
Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I sense you're ready for the vote. All those in favor of Senator Bouchard's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
So you'll
Standing
see,
committee number, 1 minute.
oh,
Standing
sorry.
committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 4 has passed committee of the whole. Back to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you'll see that what's going on there is it was just a technical correction. I should have explained that before we voted on it, but I kind of got in a rush there. So all it does is the original bill meant 5 years. We're just making sure they're successive. That's really the whole bill. It's a simple bill, and it just ties the grazing permit with the water use and for beneficial use. So ask for your favorable vote and stand for any questions.
Discussion on the bill. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that to do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. House Bill 4 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 88. Clerk, will read it in.
House Bill 88 engrossed. Name change notice publication of minors amendment, sponsored by Representative Harshman, an act relating to civil procedure. Was referred to committee number 1, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Costa, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, chair.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Mr. Chairman? Nethercott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the due pass recommendation of House Bill 88, name change notice publication of minors amendment. To explain this bill, I call on Senator Cost.
Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a short bill, so it won't take very long to go through it. What this is right now to get a name change, you have to put it in the papers and all, and this is for minors where there's a problem that the court, upon good cause, will allow it to not be published. Sometimes whether it's for any kind of a circumstance like maybe child abuse or whatever, there's that situation where you don't want that name out into the public. Provided that the judges feel there's good cause shown, then they can say that the name does not need to be out. Of course, you need to understand that for joint custody and those things, both people have to agree if there's a name change or anything, so that really has no impact on this. This is for specific certain circumstances where they're trying to keep the name of the child, I guess anonymous would be the best way. There was one amendment in the House, and that was, if you look on page 2, at line 3, they inserted upon good cause. That was not in there before, and they felt this gives the judges the flexibility to be able to make a good decision about it. So with that being said, I would ask for your favorable vote. Protect our minors that need protecting.
Discussion on the bill. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, I already forgot who said it. Senator Nethercott's motion. When the committee whole rises to report that to do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 88, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 88 has passed committee of the whole. Senator Hutchins, can I have you come up here for a moment?
We'll get back into the swing of things here. I gotta get my bearings. I'll remember where to start. Ellen? Ellen? Where do I start on that? I'm just filling in for him. I'm sorry? Can we get the reading clerk to read the bill? Okay, which one is this? House Bill, the next bill for our consideration, excuse me, is House Bill 110. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 110 engrossed. Board of Psychology Behavior Analyst Regulations, sponsored by Representative Larson, an act relating to professions and occupations. Was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 110, Board of Psychology Behavior Analyst Regulation. And I will explain this bill to you. Despite being fairly thick, it's a very straightforward bill. This bill was brought to us earlier in the session by Representative Larson. This came about as we finished construction of the state hospital and the project we worked on, and began to look at hiring and getting to work more behavioral analysts, both in Evanston and in Lander. We came to find through an AG opinion, through some other things that we discovered, that the licensing was not in place for the behavioral analysts. We had these folks doing these jobs in the schools, in the state hospital, at the training school, and they weren't licensed. It was a license that's never been created in the state of Wyoming. Therefore, the opinion was given that that we could no longer use those folks who were unlicensed to work in these facilities, the most important one being the schools, because no longer could they have that process done. They would have to then hire a psychologist, a licensed psychologist to do these jobs, which is quite cost prohibitive. Matter of fact, most school districts would be unable to do it, and as well as an additional cost to the state. And getting all of the interested parties and the parties that are involved in this, mostly including the psychologist, they were anxious, actually. They had no problems with introducing this into their act and putting the licensing act for the behavioral analyst within their act. And that being the case, after working this through, we looked at several other states and looked at their language for how they licensed their behavioral analysts. And it turns out that most of the states around us, as well as most other states in the country, do it this way. They license their behavioral analysts through their psychologist recommendation. So what you see before you is the bill that does just that. It creates some things like the background checks, a board, and how the board members, we did alter the number of people on the board. Let me find the page number here for you. It was, actually the board number stayed the same, but they were having trouble getting people from private citizenry to come in and fill positions on that board. So on page 10, you will see the makeup of that Board of Psychology did change to 6 licensed psychologists, 2 licensed behavioral analysts, and 1 public member rather than 2 public members. So we keep the number the same. What we did is just added the behavioral analyst and cut it down to 1 public member. Aside from that in the bill, if you go through it, it just sets the language to license these folks, says how they have to be, and well, first of all, the board has to be appointed for the appointments on page 12, their length of appointments. And there's specific training for the behavioral analyst that's been set long time. They have a national board that sets their qualifications, that's in place. And as with other acts of licensing, you'll notice that we leave that open a little bit, because as board certifications change, as medicine changes, any board can change their licensing requirements or their certification requirements to a different certifying agency. Rather than have to go back into the statutes every time, we just listed that on page 13 as being their national certification board, so that we stay in compliance without having to open the statute every time. The number you will see on page 13 on line 12, that the rule, excuse me, that the criminal history background checks are 2. Now, I will tell you that the Board of Psychologists said 2 is good with them, 5 would have been good with them. 2 is just the number that was picked for the final draft of the bill, but that was certainly movable. But 2 years, what they were happy with. The remainder of the bill, senators, just talks about how to treat any kind of fraud, how to treat any kind of problem with these behavior analysts, all addressed in the Board of Psychology. It's straightforward, and we did put the enacted date to be immediately, as this is an immediate need in the schools, in our state facilities in Evanston and Lander, and I would encourage you to vote aye to cure a problem that we had that we didn't anticipate before. I would encourage your aye vote on the bill.
Is there any discussion on the bill? If there's no further discussion on the bill. If you're ready, question being called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 110 do pass, say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is passed.
And officially, House Bill 110 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 117. Reading clerk, read it in, please.
House Bill 117 engrossed, Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact, sponsored by Representative Kinner, an act relating to professions and occupations. Was referred to committee number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Hutchings?
Heard the motion on the committee of the, oops, sorry. Jeez, I had it marked here. I move that the committee of the whole, when it rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 117 do pass.
Senator Pappas, could you explain that to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill concerns an interstate compact for occupational therapy. There were two interstate compacts that you were going to see this session. Unfortunately, one didn't see the day of light in here, but this one came over to us from the House, or from the other chamber. So let me explain to you a little bit about this. I'm not going to go through the bill. It's a very long bill, 68 pages, but from page 2 to page 61 can't be changed. Any interstate compact has to be adopted by each state verbatim. So we're not going to discuss any of that. I can certainly answer questions on any of the provisions that are in there if you'd like, but I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to make this real fast and explain the benefits and some of the basics that are in the bill, and then I'll stand for questions. So the Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact will allow licensed occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants to practice in all states that join the compact. This will remove the need for practitioners to get individual license in each state where they want to practice, assuming that state has joined the compact. So this compact is the same form and function as the other ones you've seen pass this body. You've seen the Nurse Licensure Compact, the Advanced Nurse Licensure Compact, you've seen the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact, Speech, Language, and Pathology Compact. This is no different, structured identical. Both occupational therapists and assistants are covered under this act, and the compact will take effect when 10 states have ratified it, have adopted it. And I can tell you right now, the 10th state just at the beginning of February ratified it. So the commission will be stood up and the compact will go into effect. There are 13 states looking at it right now, Wyoming being one of them. So what are the benefits? There's improved access for occupational therapy services. And it was shared with me that many parts of our state are in very much need of therapy services, of professionals that can provide these types of services. There's increased market opportunities for our own OTs on our OTAs by authorizing practice in member states. And 3 of those states actually abut us right now. It also helps them when they're doing telehealth, which provides continuity of care. A lot of their patients will move and they can continue to provide them continuity of care through telehealth until that patient finds a new practitioner. And then it also supports relocating military spouses. This is a big deal for DOD. DOD is behind every interstate compact, and you're gonna see a lot of them. You're gonna see dentistry, you're gonna see K-12 teachers, you're gonna see all sorts of folks looking to do these professional licensure compacts. DOD has even made their basing choices on whether states have these types of compacts in place. And then it also encourages cooperation among the member states and helps us regulate the practice. So those are the benefits. Now, just a couple of myths I want to dispel before I open it up for discussion. First of all, this has no impact on our state's scope of practice, okay? Every state can in the that joins the compact have specific state laws. Our state laws still apply. So if someone comes into practice under the compact, they still have to abide by every law that we have on our books. We're not changing our law at all. And number two, this doesn't preclude, if someone wants to hold a license here, a single license, you can do that. You don't have to practice under the compact. So practitioners are not required to practice under the compact. And all 50 states license occupational therapists, and their requirements are consistent across the board. So when people come from compact states, we know that the education, the clinical training, all those things are consistent with what we believe here in Wyoming. And finally, there is no fiscal impacts for the state, okay? And I've heard that some people have been telling you that it costs the state money. It does not. It doesn't come out of the general fund. It comes out of, there is a cost to join the compact, to be part of it. The licensees actually pay for the fees, okay? And there will be a fee for a privilege to practice. So if someone comes into this state under the compact to practice, they would pay I don't know what the board will set the fee. It's up to our board to set the fee, but they could set it anywhere from a new license fee to a renewal fee. I've seen them do both. So those fees will go to pay the commission expenses. So the organizations, both the two national organizations of occupational therapy, the association, and the national board that certifies OTs are behind this. Our state organization is behind it, and all of our therapists are behind it because they know how it can help their practice. So with that, I'll answer questions.
Senator Cole. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume this is the mirror bill for SS 54? No? All right, well, I guess it seemed, I was reading both bills, I thought you had explained that there was a bill that didn't make it through. Could you, expound on what bill number it is didn't make it in the Senate then? I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead, Senator Mathis.
Billman, yeah. No, it's not a mirror bill. There was another compact bill, but it wasn't for occupational therapists. The bill that I had brought was for counselors, licensed professional counselors. And so it's similar structure. The bills are identical. They have almost the same verbiage in it. All compacts, all mutual recognition compacts are all the same as far as structure. And it's the same, it was the same way. If that bill would have been here, you would have found that there was no fiscal impact there. It's the licensees that pay these fees. Same way with the practice of that particular profession. You know, all the professionals are for it because they know what it'll do for our patients and for their practices. So I hope that if that explained anything.
Senator Cole, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. It did help. I guess, if you could please explain why just give you an example, the Senate File 54 had a negative fiscal note. And could you explain, I guess, how that's taken care of, and does the department with their licensing fees collect enough money to continue their operations without, say, having a general fund need to be made whole? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, it did. It had a it was $3,000, I believe. It was very minimal, maybe a 6, yeah. And basically it was for the first couple of years because they have to stand up the commission. But after they start licensing people, those fees, it becomes revenue neutral, okay? The fees pay for that, and there are no general dollar funds, none whatsoever. It comes from the professionals, from their licensing fees. All boards are that way, that I know of. I could be corrected, but I believe every board collects fees from the people that they license and register, and that's what operates the boards. None of the boards have general funds going to them. So the professionals actually want this. They're willing to pay for it. So
Further discussion on the bill? Are you up, Senator Beauchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to answer the question, I asked about general funds. I wanted to make sure that we weren't taking money out of the taxpayers' funds. So this is all going to be done within the board. All the licensing fees will be adjusted however they see fit. So I truly didn't see any problem myself. So just passing that on for information.
Further discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Hutchings' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 120 or 117, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 117 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration, and we're on the home stretch, horse fans. House Bill 125.
House Bill 125, engrossed, Workplace Injury Assistance, Information and Guidance, sponsored by Representative Connolly, an act relating to labor and employment, was referred to Committee Number 1, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. No, Senator French. Senator Nethercott, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the due pass recommendation of House Bill 125, Workplace Injury Assistance, Information and Guidance. And to explain this bill, I'd call on Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move House Bill 125, Workplace Injury Assistance, Information and Guidance. I was a little surprised that this didn't go on for everybody. Our organization had workers' comp for the 40 years I was there, and we got lots of good information from the organization. But what I found was that if you weren't signed up for workers' comp, your employees and your management didn't get any information out of the workers' comp group. So this is saying that they should provide information and guidance to employers and employees regarding workplace injuries as specified under this paragraph. That's as simple as it is. That's all it's saying, that they have to give those employees that information. We have a lot of companies in the state that are self-insured and don't pay into the fund, which is okay, but their employees should be able to hear what is available to them in both ways. So the employer and the employee is going to be informed how to proceed after a workplace injury. So the one thing about this, on page 2, question came up, the line 8 to 11, that section 7 is existing language, and there are 4 separate administrators already in there in the divisions that handle those handle that work. So it's a pretty simple little bill. It does a lot of good for employees and employers. I would ask your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Discussion on the bill. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 125, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 125 has passed committee of the whole. Senators, the finish line is in sight, the green bucket's within smelling distance. The final bill for your consideration is House Bill 108.
House Bill 108, Funeral Service Practitioner Amendment, sponsored by Representative Hallinan, an act relating to funeral service practitioners, was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McEwen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your desire, Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 108 do pass.
I'll bet Senator Nethercott's going to explain this one to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will explain this one for you, good senators. So the funeral practitioners of our state have certainly, like so many of our employers, been experiencing a shortage of qualified workers to assist with such an important service in our communities. And they were particularly taxed when it came to COVID and with those increasing deaths that unfortunately we have been experiencing in this state as well. And so they've come forward and reached out to the co-sponsors of this bill to assist in providing some reductions in some of the requirements associated with this profession that the statewide practitioners fully support and are asking for. So essentially providing additional definitions, if you can see on page 2, lines 8 through 11, to identify what embalming does not include. It does so, the new language says, embalming does not include setting features for the purpose of identification of an unembalmed dead human body or disinfecting a dead human body through non-arterial methods. And so under the definition of embalming and who's qualified to do that, that requires very highly sophisticated expertise where they go to, where they receive educations for and degrees allowing them to do this process. And so previously under the definition of embalming, if we don't add this language, their support staff and technicians that they bring on board would not be allowed to do this. And so this affords that ability to do this, certainly under their direction and care as well. We're also changing some of the requirements about the applicant for the license required for qualifications of a funeral service practitioner. And so if we go down, we can see that the language has been added to really on lines 8 through 16 is what we're looking at here, requiring that they have obtained an associate's or higher degree in funeral service practice or mortuary science from an American Board of Funeral Service Education accredited mortuary science program or the equivalent accredited program. Furthermore, additional requirements associated with what's required. Not sure how much you want to go through this at 5 o'clock. But the practitioners across the state are in full support and desperately need these changes to allow for them to receive the assistance that they need to ensure quality service across our state and that they're able to continue to operate in our local communities. With that, good senators, I stand for questions.
Discussion on the bill. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Hutchings' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 108, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. House Bill 108 has passed the committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Guess we didn't get that one buried. Mr. Chairman, I move committee of the whole rise and report.
Dad jokes. You've heard the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Too bad. Ayes have it. Mr. President.
Ready to read the committee of the whole report?
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 7 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 16, do pass. House Bill 17, do pass amended. House Bill 33, do pass amended. House Bill 47, do pass amended. House Bill 49, do pass amended. House Bill 52 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 65, do pass. House Bill 80, do pass amended. House Bill 78 failed to pass committee of the whole and was indefinitely postponed. House Bill 79 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 87, do pass. House Bill 42 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 4, do pass amended. House Bill 88 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 110, do pass. House Bill 117 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 125 engrossed, do pass. House Bill 108, do pass. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Senator Baldwin.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the committee of whole report.
The motion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Report has been adopted. Good job, Senator Baldwin. Stand by just a moment. Standing committee reports.
March 2, 2022. Mr. President, your committee number 2, appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 63 engrossed, county and district attorneys' salary amendments, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman. March 2, 2022, Mr. President, your committee number 2, appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 107, Water State Revolving Funds Amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
Thank you. Messages from the House?
From the House of Representatives, message number 189, concurrence requested, March 2, 2022. Mr. President, the Senate file number 39, Fireman's Pension Plan Benefits, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 59, excused 1. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting House amendments. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk. Message number 186, March 2, 2022. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading. Senate File 23, Nursing Home Administrators, Ayes 59, excused 1. Message number 187, Senate File 24, Pharmacist and Pharmacy Technician Practice, Ayes 59, excused 1. Message number 188, Senate File 29, Liability for Governmental Health Care Providers Amendment. Ayes 42, noes 17, excused 1. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Okay. Signing of enrolled acts. Where that order business signing enrolled acts, Senate Enrolled Act number 1. Reading clerk, read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act number 1, being original Senate File 23.
About to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 1, same being original Senate File 23. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 2, original being Senate File 31. Please read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act number 2, being original Senate File 31.
About to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 2, same being original Senate File 31. So signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 3.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 3, being original Senate File 2.
About to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 3, the same being original Senate File 2. So signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 4, please read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 4, being original Senate File 29.
Senate Enrolled Act number 4. I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 4, the same being Senate File 29. So signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 5. Please read it in.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 5, being original Senate File 24.
About to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 5, the same being Senate Enrolled Act number 24. So signed. All right. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, seems to clear the desk, appears to be.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, March 3rd.
Announcements, please, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow, March 3rd, upon adjournment, your Committee Number 5 Agriculture will meet in the Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider House Bill 2 and gross disposition of water rights, House Bill 73 Omnibus Water Bill Planning, House Bill 137 and gross state land exchanges, public notice, and House Bill 136 underground water contested case hearings.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Landon.
Thank you. Mr. President, your Transportation Committee will be meeting this evening in W2 and online to take up 4 bills tonight. House Bill 81, Operation of Motorcycles Disabled Persons. House Bill 53 and gross military department discrimination or harassment grievances. House Bill 82, military discharge and benefits. And House Bill 18, off-road recreational vehicle registration amendments. Mr. President, just a heads up to the Transportation Committee, we're going to have a special meeting at noon on Friday to take up a couple of bills. So please mark that down, be aware of it. On Friday, we will take up a couple of bills we'll announce tomorrow, Mr. President, but we do not normally meet at noon on Fridays. We will this Friday. Thank you.
Thanks, you folks have owned the night shift, moving to noon Friday. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources will meet tomorrow morning, March 3rd, at 8 a.m. in the Capitol Extension Room W02 and online to take up 2 bills, House Bill 54, State Parks Recreation Management Authority, and House Bill 72, Hunting License Application Funds. We will also be doing interviews for the governor's appointee nominees for the following: the Gaming Commission and the Outfitters and Professional Guides. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further announcements? Further announcements. Okay, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The Senate stands